Hey, good morning, YouTubers. A rare Saturday video was brought to me by request in our coaching channels inside DFSArmy.com. So I'm going to come at you with a video, a little bit of a slate breakdown. We're going old school. Today, the research station at DFS Army isn't quite up and running just yet. So I figured this is a great opportunity to show you how to do it so you're not completely dependent upon us. This is what I have to do when I get up really, really early in the mornings and things aren't ready to go. And this is how I prep a lot of my information. So we're going to go real old school in this episode of NHL DFS Diary for you on Saturday, February 16th. So let's sort of dive in and really chop this slate up. We noticed that the slate itself, the 1 p.m. early only, Detroit and Philly, Calgary, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, Colorado is on the slate. So it's a 3-game slate on Fanduel. Don't know what it is on DraftKings. And we can look at the starting lineups easy enough now that we know that it's these two 1 o'clock games and this 3 o'clock game. And we can start watching for a little bit of targets 6.5, 6, 6, big ITTs 3.4, 3.5, 3.1, 2.8. Very, very interesting. So I'm going to show you something a little bit different in some of these matchups if you want to write them down on a piece of paper along with me. And we're going to start targeting what we think some of the teams are going to be. Minus 190 looks like a big Philly favorite. Minus 130 in St. Louis. So honestly, 3-game slate, pretty easy to tell where the favorite's going to be. Carter Hart's a big time name right now. So is Jordan Binnington. Looks like Jake Allen's going to get the start. Minus 190 against, 3.5 ITT. We know Philly can give up goals. They were earlier in the season. Pardon me while I've got tons of stuff in the background on a Saturday morning going on in the house. This is not a soundproof studio, so you'll hear all sorts of noise from people walking by to dogs chomping on bones to my wife getting in the shower, whatever. 2.52 against. I'm telling you, stack Detroit. You want the contrarian play? Stack Detroit. Why? Because Philly's the overwhelming favorite by the odds and by the ITT. And if people are going to look at that and just be very, very superficial about their approach to the slate and say, well, I have to have a lot of Philly tonight, stack Detroit. You'll get a ton of leverage. But we can analyze other teams, who's going to score, who's given up goals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Without my normal crutch of the research station, I had to go old school to NHL.com and go to stats and then go to teams and then set my parameters. And I'm a big baseline guy. I'm not a big and I'll show you why. I'm not a big baseline guy in terms of I need to see what they're doing on the season. I don't give a crap what they were doing back in October. No, I do not care. St. Louis was awful. Buffalo was great. Philly was giving up tons of goals. And as you'll see, things change throughout the season. And we need to roll with the changes because what a team was in October is not what a team is right now. St. Louis is absolutely proving that. And not just because I live here. Anybody that follows hockey knows that. So really and truly, you need to be playing to what they're doing currently, not what they were doing 3 months ago. It helps to have a gauge of the overall strength of the team. So if I set season numbers from October 3rd to the end of the season and hit the results or whatever, I've got, 58 games played so far? And in terms of goals for, I've got 225 goals scored for Tampa Bay, San Jose, Calgary, Toronto, Winnipeg, Pittsburgh. These are generally the high-powered offenses. We know that. Goals against. These are going to be the weaker defenses. Chicago, well, not anymore. Ottawa, New Jersey, Edmonton, Florida, Philadelphia, not so much anymore. Colorado, New York, Detroit, whatever. These are the teams that we would be targeting. But if we're only looking at large samples like this, we miss a lot. So I kicked down to 9 and 10 game samples. I went back, played with the date, game by game, changed the date around, got to get beyond the All-Star break, some results, hit run report, and you're going to generally find that January 20th, give or take, is going to get you 9, 10, 11 games. So there's a 10-game sample. So let's go goals for. And let's focus just on the teams that are on today's slate. St. Louis Blues weren't in the top 5 on the season, were they? They are now the top scoring team on this slate of 6 games. 36 goals for in their last 10 games, last 9 games. More than these guys with the 10-game sample have. St. Louis Blues are an offense to be paying attention to. San Jose, scroll on down. Philly and Pittsburgh are next. Yes, Philly is the second highest scoring team on the slate. 28 goals for in 10 games. 9 games, actually. Pittsburgh, 27. They're the same. St. Louis is 10 goals stronger, though. So write these down in order. St. Louis, Philly, Pittsburgh. If you want to put the 28 next to their names, do it. Scroll down a little bit more. Detroit, 22 games. Did you think Detroit wasn't the worst scoring team in there? Better than Colorado? Better than Calgary right now? Go back to the goals for. Calgary's third most on the season. Go back to the last 10 games, and they suck. These are the ebbs and flows of a hockey season, and this is what you have to be able to time if you want to be successful in hockey. Don't be playing Calgary right now just because they're a high-powered offense. Understand that, yes, they are a high-powered offense, but also understand that they might let you down because right now they're not good. Could they snap back today? Sure. Could they continue to be crappy? Sure. That's the unpredictability of hockey, but what we're looking at is an indicator that they are not what their season numbers show. And we can plan accordingly because a lot of people are still going to run Monahan, Gaudreau, all these guys out there. And we can maybe consider fading them today. Okay? Looking down the list at the goals for in these 10-game samples, write these guys down in order. Colorado, giving up the most goals on the slate. Scroll down a little bit further. Pittsburgh is next. Calgary is next at 25. Scroll down a little bit more. We get down here to Detroit, who's actually playing decent defense right now. Philly, who, again, season-long numbers, goals against. Oh, Philly sucks. 6th worst defense in the league. We should be targeting them. Should we? Look like the 5th or 6th best defense in the league right now over the last 10 games. A lot of this is determined by who they've played the last 3 or 4 games. So if you really want to go dig through game logs and figure out where they're playing crappy offenses that just can't score and kind of split hairs a little bit, dig a little bit deeper that way, fine. I'm just telling you superficially by the numbers, Philly's one of the better defenses right now. A lot of that is Carter Hart. Down here, St. Louis Blues, toughest defense in the league. Was not that way in October, was it? All of a sudden, they're the 3rd toughest defense in the league over the last 10 games. So write those down. On the goals for, you should have in order, St. Louis, Philly, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Colorado, Calgary. Calgary at the bottom. On the right side, at the goals against category, in order, Colorado, Pittsburgh, Calgary, Detroit, Philly, St. Louis. I never would have told you, thought at Halloween that St. Louis is going to be one of the top scoring teams. If you would have told me St. Louis is the top scoring team on the slate and the toughest defense on a slate in around Thanksgiving, I would have laughed at you and said, what, is it a 1-game slate? No, it's a 3-game slate, which isn't great, but you can see that overall across the league, it could be a 9-game slate and they might be up there at the top on both sides. That's a good thing for you to know as a DFS player because you can target them on offense and avoid them on defense. If you wanted to drill down even tighter, you can go with a 5-game sample back to about February 7th, 4 and 5 games, and do the same thing. St. Louis, 2nd in 5 games, 2nd most in the league. Yeah. They scored 8 against New Jersey, blah, blah. They all count. New Jersey is actually scoring goals right now. You're going to want to take note of that coming up in the next couple of days, I would imagine. Minnesota, there's Philly. Philly's number 2. Colorado's number 3. Interesting. They were number 5 on our slate in the 10-game sample. They're number 3 in the 5-game. Are they bouncing back? This is an indicator they are. Pittsburgh would be 4. Detroit would be 5. And whom I meant, Calgary would be, Calgary still sucks. Okay, so there's your first tip today. Fade Calgary. Let everybody else jump on those big brand names. Get off of them. You may have to take a one-off here or there for salary cap reasons, but largely, don't play them. You're seeing an indicator their offense isn't playing well. And if we look earlier, they were bottom? They're 6th on both lists, 10-game and 5-game samples, and they are playing. Who are they playing today? Pittsburgh, who is allowing the 2nd most goals. So I guess Calgary could erupt, but it puts them in more of a GPP type of scenario. Let's look in the 5-game sample, goals against, and see where Pittsburgh is. There's Calgary giving up a ton of goals over 5 games, so that puts Pittsburgh in a good spot. There's Detroit, that puts Philly in a good spot. There's Colorado, puts St. Louis in a pretty good spot. Scroll down here a little bit more. There's Philly, a little bit tougher defense on the slate, kind of middle of the road. Pittsburgh, a little tougher lately. And St. Louis, tough again. So Colorado's not in a good spot. Colorado's not scoring goals, and they're facing a team that is not giving goals up. Would it surprise you if Colorado did score a lot of goals tonight or today? No, shouldn't surprise you. But the odds, if we're going by the way they've been playing lately, tell us they won't. So they're a solid fade. They're a reasonable fade. Calgary is a reasonable fade. We've already cut it down to 4 offenses. St. Louis, Philly, Pittsburgh, and maybe Detroit. Because we can let go of Colorado and Calgary and let everybody else jump over there and hope that what has been happening continues to happen for one more game. That's called riding the train. That's the way I play. The way I play, I'll ride the train, and the reason why is I want to play with what I know and hope it continues one more game. A lot of people will ride the regression train, which is, oh my God, Colorado and Calgary are such good offenses based on their season numbers. They will come back to form. Therefore, play them because they're sucking right now and they can turn it around any given day. Equally viable way to play hockey. But I would recommend don't flip-flop back and forth between one style or the other. Pick one and stick with it because the variance is going to go where one method works one day and another method works the other day and another if you try and time it, you might always miss it. At least sticking with one method, you will catch it when your style comes back into favor. So that would be another tip for you. So if I'm targeting offenses based on the 10-game one, which is what I do when I look at the research station and I go through this stuff for you guys because of the L10 numbers here, right? Then I would be using this column here, and I'm drawing lines when I have the order of St. Louis, Philly, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Colorado, Calgary on the goals for side, and then on the goals against side, Colorado, Pittsburgh, Calgary, Detroit, Philly, and St. Louis. What I'm looking at is who's matching up against who. St. Louis is playing Colorado today. St. Louis is the most powerful offense on the slate as of right now, and Colorado is the weakest defense on the slate as of right now. That is a one-on-one matchup. St. Louis should have a good game. Am I going to say they're going to score 10 goals? No. But should they have a good offensive game? Yes. Philly plays Detroit, so that would be number 2 versus number 4, which isn't necessarily great. Pittsburgh plays Calgary, which is 3-on-3. So I've got a 1 versus 1 and a 3 versus 3, which probably is a little bit better than a 2 versus a 4, but not by much. I mean, it is what it is. So St. Louis, Philly, and Pittsburgh would be the teams that I would be targeting. Detroit, probably not. They're playing Philly, which is the second toughest defense. They'd be ranked number 5 on your goals against list. Colorado's playing St. Louis, which would be number 5 offense versus the number 6 defense, which would be like the 6, meaning the toughest defense on the slate. So, no. The sleeper is going to be Calgary because they're the 6th rated offense on this list, and they're playing the 2nd rated softest defense on the slate. I wish I'd have drawn a chart. Maybe someday I'll draw a chart. Pittsburgh's given up 28 goals in their last 10 games. That's a 2.8 against average. Calgary's only scored 2 goals per game over the last 10, but they're playing one of the softer defenses. So if an offense is going to come to life, it will be against a softer defense, which means Calgary could be a sleeper. So if you want to put a sleeper pick on Calgary, go for it. I'm telling you, focus on St. Louis, Pittsburgh, and Philly. Okay, so let's dive in to the NHL stats. We've looked at this starting lineups page. It's a great way to see power play, line 1, line 2, correlation, all this stuff. You can finagle however you want, shows the salaries. Does it for DraftKings, does it for Fanduel, whichever one you flip the switch and do, it's fine. But I like to go into the player stats. Here, you find that clicking NHL, clicking more research tools, and then scrolling down a little bit and clicking player stats. So what I can do is I can click in the filters here, open up all of the teams, and click off all the teams that are not on my slate. Okay? So I got 6 teams: Calgary, Colorado, Detroit, Philly, Pittsburgh, St. Louis. Right? Those are the teams that are playing. I've got it set up to where I've got a lot of stats up here. I don't really care. I care about this one right here. Fantasy points. That's it. So fantasy points per game over the season gives me an idea of who I should be looking at, and I can look for, where'd my salaries go? Don't tell me you took my salaries off of here. Why would you do such a thing? Team, player, goals against, shots, point, money for it. Why the hell would you do such a thing? That's just dumb. 4 weeks. Show me salaries. Nothing. Man, you suck. They must be watching my videos and watching how I pick them apart and use their tool and then try to drive me. You want salaries? Be premium. Screw you. I've got a club I already belong to. Jeez. Giving you free press and everything, and you can't help me out a little bit? Stuck on it, Roto Grinders. Jesus. All right. Well, we'll make do with what we can. And I like, season numbers give me a nice baseline, but I really like the last 4 weeks when I use this particular tool, which I'm liking less and less and less every day, Roto Grinders people. And that's why we're so hell-bent at DFS Army about making tools that you can actually see at a glance and actually do your research quickly for one price that includes coaching every single sport we offer, stats and research stations, every single sport we offer. Head to the comments section, go sign up right now and revolt against this Roto-Grinders trash. DFSArmy.com. In the comments section, use coupon code CHOP, trigger a 20% off discount. Do it now. While you're down there, hit the like and subscribe, ring the notification bell. My goodness. Makes it hard. But, so I guess for 4 weeks, I got to go back through and I got to redo my filters. This is lame too. So, diatribe averted. Yeah, I really don't care if I just pissed off the Roto Grinders people. That's just brutal. Who takes your salaries off your tool? What's up with that? And you call yourself a DFS site. It's just lame. Now, if there's another way, I'll eat crow. If there's another way to show the salaries, which just doesn't look like there is. That's just pitiful. All right. So now that I've got them sorted out, I can go back by fantasy numbers. I can see Tarasenko is probably pretty important today, right? 10-game sample is roughly what I'm using here. I could cut it down. I can't cut it down on Roto Grinders tool because I don't have 5-game sample sizes. Last week's only like 2 games, maybe. Short sample. So I got to go with this number and just do the best that I can. I used to sort by salaries, and I would do the same thing I've done on our research station, which is look for out-of-place salaries. Look for guys, the higher price guys up top, and look for the cheaper guys, down in here and find value. It's going to be very, very hard to find value on this. I mean, this Tony Otto guy is definitely going to be a value. He's only got a 1-game sample size in his favor. Anastasio, maybe, whatever. But I'm looking for the producers. And if I see St. Louis, St. Louis, St. Louis, there's a stack for you. A top, 15 stack. Today we know they're going up against Colorado. Weaker defense on the slate. I've got Petro, O'Reilly, Tarasenko. Is a decent stack if it's not too pricey. I'm not going to be able to find value for you today, guys, and I apologize for that because I've lost the ability to do this without making this a 40-minute video thanks to Roto Grinders. I can sort by positions, though. I can look for defensemen that are producing. And I can see Letang, Gostisbehere, and Giordano obviously going to be expensive. Gostisbehere is the cheapest of the 3. Petro, we saw. It's going to be cheaper. Sanheim is cheap in Philly. So these would be a couple of your value defenders. Eric Johnson, I guess, is okay. Barry is okay. They're producing at 12 points per game on Fanduel. Parayko is okay. I would look at Johnson and Barry and Parayko and see which one's cheaper, and I might choose between those 3 since they're all running at about 12 points. Sanheim should be cheaper than even Parayko. Don't know this guy. 1-game sample size doesn't matter. Dunn is another one. Looks like a lot of St. Louis defense is going to be played today. TJ Brody, if you need maybe a punt, I don't know what his price is, but if he's under, say, 4K on FanDuel, he's probably pretty decent. Probably a pretty decent option based on recent production. I mean, you can see some shots on goal. What you can't see is blocks, and blocks are very important for defensemen. Why blocks isn't up here, I'll never understand, because I like to add shots and blocks together, and it creates a sliding scale. If a guy puts a lot of shots on goal, that helps me. If he puts a lot of blocks on goal, that helps me. But if a guy doesn't do a lot of shots, but does do a lot of goals or blocks, it's going to look weak in this category, but he's still viable as a cheap defense option. Greg Padron, Jeff Petrie, Alex Edler, these types of guys that don't produce a ton of shots or don't produce a ton of points are still good when they're cheap. You need to know where they are. You need to know who they are, and this tool does nothing to show you that. Our research station, DFS Army, does. So, those are some basics on defense. Let's look at the centers. Bozak, that's not right. Got to resort that out. Crosby, #1 producing center on the slate over the last 10 games. That is actually interesting. Lindholm, Couturier. You're going to want to look for value here. You're going to want to see if you're getting about 2x. So you need about 8K or under out of O'Reilly, 8K or under out of Couturier. You need 8K or under out of Lindholm and Crosby. Crosby should be over 8K if I remember right, which means these 3 are more valuable than Crosby on this slate. making Crosby a little bit more of a contrarian GPP type of play over the last 10 games. Malkin is very expensive on his little 5-game sample. He should be at about 7,500. If he's above 7,500, he's not a value to you. He's playable in a short 3-game slate, GPP type stuff, yes, but he's not a value. He's not maybe a cash type play right now. He's too expensive for what he's currently doing or not currently doing. Anastasiou, decent play. I mean, I guarantee you Anastasiou's under 7,500 on Fanduel. Should be. He's at 7,200. Okay, it's closer than I thought. He should be around 6,500, I would think. Giroux, Monahan is too expensive for this. McKinnon, way too expensive for this. You might look at a Glendening. Konechny as a center? That's kind of silly. So under 6K for Konechny would make him a value. Soderberg has been a value all year long. Backlund, Sundqvist is okay for St. Louis because he's producing. Sundqvist is actually more valuable than Bozak right now, most likely. Now you're getting down here into the crap of the crap. I don't think I would mess with that too much. Turn these guys on with the wings. Turn these guys off with the center. Let's go looking at the wings really, really quick. Tarasenko, top producer on the slate. Don't know if that'll continue, but 8 goals in his last 8 games, 9 in his last 10. Pretty solid. Voracek, Dylan Larkin. These are household names on this slate anyway. These are going to be popular guys. But if you're looking for some value, we'll see if we can find a cheaper guy, maybe a Vanek under 6K. See, I'm just dividing this by 2. 2x is about right because $60,000, 2x gets you 120 points on FanDuel, which is really close to cash. You need about 130. So it's a good round number. You're looking for about 2x, and that's how you can quickly spot value plays. Looking for guys that are their salaries are half of their point producing over this time span you're looking at. Godra, way too expensive. Lindblom, Van Riemsdyk, Rantanen, way too expensive for this. He's not a 5K player, and he's producing at 5K player numbers. Nyquist, Blueger, this is falling off really, really quick down here. If you want some upside, I would keep riding the Jaden Schwartz train. Jaden Schwartz is far too. I'll give you one little tidbit, and then we'll ship you out of here. Last week, I listened to a local St. Louis radio station say that they ran a simulator looking at Jaden Schwartz' Corsi numbers, his scoring chance numbers, his shots on goal, just his general activity, where he's shooting from, the quality of shots that he's putting on net, etc. All that StatCast type, sabermetrics type numbers for hockey, Corsi numbers, whatever, for hockey. And instead, what they showed you was if they ran all the games up to this point in the season 1,000 times, did it 1,000 times as a simulator, Jaden Schwartz would only have 3 goals 3 times. 3 times out of 1,000. Less than what? Less than 0.1% is the likelihood of that happening. He's suffering from major bad luck. He is still putting on quality shots, is still shooting quite a bit. His price is way down because of it, and his upside is through the roof. If I had some kind of an all-in play to make tonight, it'd be that for this short slate. It might not work. It hasn't worked all year. But if regression comes back to the mean, if regression comes back to where it should be, where he should be at like 15 goals or so, he's got a short period of time in the leftover portion of this season to score about 12 goals. And that's going to be a binge, and you're going to want to be on it for $4,000, $5,000 FanDuel dollars. You're going to want to be on it because it'll quickly go to 6 and 7, which is where he should be. That's a GPP narrative. It is something that you don't have any recent results, and that's other than maybe a couple of assists and some shots on goal and stuff that is maybe showing you that he's maybe showing signs of life. But I'm telling you, he really might go on a major binge. And if he does, then, give me a shout out on Twitter when it happens or something like that. Because honestly, I think that there's a very high likelihood that when Tarasenko cools off, if Schwartz heats up, the St. Louis offense can continue to do what it's doing and solidify playoff chances. And yes, I'm a St. Louis homer. But when I heard that about how much of an outlier this is with Jaden Schwartz, I was all in on him. I think he scored a goal that first night. I think he had an assist in his last game out. And to be quite honest with you, I don't think his price has moved a ton. So it might actually be starting to normalize. And if that's the case, I'll ride the train for all it's worth for $4,500 or whatever, because that's just cheap and I can afford, him only giving me 5 or 6 points, and it's not going to tank my lineup. Whereas if I had an $8,000 guy do that to me. So it's a smart risk to take. Anyway, DFS Army, hit the comments section, click the link. Obviously, use coupon code CHOP, like, subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, get in here, start learning. This is obviously going to be put into our VIPs who are going to be able to use a lot of this to formulate some lineups. Your goal is to pick the offenses that you want to target, right? We said Calgary is a flyer, but pick Pittsburgh, pick Philly, pick St. Louis on that 3-game slate. Start stacking up different line combos of those guys and hope what's supposed to happen happens. If you want to get really, really funky, take Calgary. And if you want to get incredibly funky because of the 190 against the big ITT, stack Detroit and GPPs. All right, guys, this is Chop-A-Dong. I'll see you later.